I log in through my Office 365. I mean, this is one way. I can go directly into Business Central too, but I like to show people the Office 365 platform has all the familiar Microsoft tools like Outlook and Excel and PowerPoint and Word and all those things. And then we also have Power Apps like Power Automate and Power BI, which is a reporting tool. And we have the ability, since Business Central is part of that platform, we have the ability to take advantage of those other applications. We're not only talking about Business Central as an ERP application, we're also including that whole platform of tools that Microsoft brings to us, or Dynamics 365, as complementary functions for Business Central. And we're going to look at a couple of those during our demo today. So I just like to call that out because it sometimes gets so focused just on Business Central, but it's actually so much more. So I like to call that out. I'm currently logged into Business Central, and I'm logged in as a business manager. So that's the role that I am logged in as. And if I go to my settings, I can show you that. When we look at my settings, the role that's assigned to me, and this is driving my permissions and my access to the system and my visibility to the modules in the system, that's at the business manager role. Now, if I select this, I can see there's other roles available. Now I've got wide open access to the system. I'm able to see all the different roles here. Typically, we assign one or two roles to a person so they could actually jump between, a project manager and a business manager, for example. And the difference between those is really what's presented to you in your role center. When we look at our dashboard, the role that we're in really dictates what's presented to us. I just want to bring that to light. And if we had multi-company, we could select between companies here as well. In my environment, I've got a few different companies. In order to create entries into either company, I can jump between them here, or I could actually open up another company in a secondary tab and just tab and jump between the tabs to actually go between companies. So that gives me a lot of functionality there. All right, I'll go ahead and cancel out of this. Within Business Central, again, this is the role center. So this is the layout, the dashboard that's presented to me when I log in. I can identify the company that I'm logged in as up in the upper left here. And across the top menu are the modules that I have. So I've got finance, and you can see all the different activities here: general journals, chart of accounts, activities related to finance. And then I've got my cash management, sales, purchasing, all across the board there. And then Business Central also has a lot of built-in artificial intelligence, which is always giving us information. So you can see here on this insight right on my dashboard is the best-selling item is the tempered sapphire tile. The system knows that because it's going through and querying the data and then reporting back to me in plain English what's actually happening. I could drill into this and see all the sales activity that are driving that particular insight, and which is pretty cool. Then we actually have another area here called Intelligent Cloud Insights. And this gives me more information. So this is kind of a neat place to start my day. If I'm high level, I can say, hey, there's an insight here. 17 of your customers are late in their payments. You can drill into that and just kind of review what customers those are, and how late are these payments. So I can look at each of these invoices, and if I wanted to, I could drill into a particular invoice. Maybe I'm calling them up and asking about why is this still open. And if they say, well, I haven't received that, I can simply click on the print and send and email it right from this page. And shortly they will have this in their email box and we can continue the conversation. I can just put in the person's email here and send it off. And you can see it's got a very nice body of the email is the actual invoice, as well as it puts a PDF attachment for this particular invoice right in the body. So with one click, I was able to email this invoice off to that customer while I'm on the phone with them, and we can have a conversation about it. So now I know that they have indeed received that particular email. And there is also a log recording that activity that I had emailed that to the customer. If there's ever any question as to whether they received it or not, or whether it was actually sent, that would answer the questions. Very powerful tools. Again, this is just based on the insights right within Business Central, the artificial intelligence that's querying our data and reporting information back to us so that we can act on it. So rather than, in the past, the model has been, well, let me go in and run this report or drill into this data. Well, we're presenting data that you can actually act on versus the other way around. Here we also have some KPI tiles. So these are the out-of-the-box ones: cash available, net income, sales, profitability, and inventory. And then down below, I've got some Power BI reports that I can jump through, and I'll touch on those in a little bit as well. So let's go back to our Role Center here. In the Role Center, as I look further down, you can see I've got some actions here. So I can actually create documents right from my dashboard rather than navigating the menu. And that's one thing about Business Central. You'll know that there's many ways to get to different things. It's not just, well, here's how you get there. It's like, well, you can get there here, you can get there here. I can go up here and type in purchase order. Many different ways that we can get to the things, the screens, the activities within Business Central. As I scroll down, more tiles, more information. Again, presenting things that I can act on. Here are these open purchase orders. I've got ongoing invoices that might need to be addressed. I've got some sales orders out there. Further down, if I'm doing an approval process, what's waiting for my approval? So, and did I send an approval request that has not been acted on yet? And that's what's indicated here with this tile. If I was receiving an approval, I would have a indicator here that says, hey, you've got 3 approvals to address. I've got that functionality right there. Self-service, if we are doing timesheets, I can have this here. And this brings up an interesting point. If we're not doing timesheets, do I really need to have this presented on my Role Center? And the answer is no. I can actually personalize this screen, move things around. I can hide this entire section if we're not doing anything with it. I can remove these things and make it very efficient and relevant to what my activities really are. I have that ability. And I don't have to call the consultants to do that. In the past, a lot of times whenever dashboard changes needed or were needed, that would be a programming request, or we would have to call your consultant and have them come in and do some magic behind the scenes that they never tell you about, and you wonder why or what they're doing. And this kind of puts the functionality right at the hands of the user, which is pretty cool. And then Power BI reports, we got more reports down here. I'm going to drill into this report here in a moment once we start talking about general ledger, because I think it's pretty powerful. And further down, I've got some other widgets. So if I'm tracking specific GL accounts, maybe I'm responsible for a particular set of expense accounts. Well, I can put those right on my dashboard and I can monitor them from here. I can drill into the activities right from the dashboard. And a lot of things throughout Business Central, there's hyperlink, knowing that, hey, if it's a hyperlink, I can drill into it, get back to the actual activities and see what events have made up this balance. So pretty powerful stuff. We're going to go back to the top Role Center here. Okay, so that's kind of a navigational view of Business Central as far as getting around. Now we're going to drive into the chart of accounts, and we touched on it just a little bit in our conversation the other day. I'm going to go ahead and start at the chart of accounts, and you guys are currently on Great Plains, so you're very familiar with a very lengthy chart of accounts. And we talked about one of our customers that has over 40,000 accounts in there. Well, when they came over to Business Central and we put everything into the natural chart of account and dimensions, we got their account down to about 1,500. Down from 40,000 to 1,500 is a pretty significant drop there. What you'll notice is in the chart of accounts, we've got our natural account number, and then when we want to tag transactions with those dimensions, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up dimensions and we'll talk about those for just a minute or two. I'll grab my dimensions and I'll show you what we have set up here. Think of the dimensions as how you have your current GL account segmented, right? You might have a segment for department as an example, or cost center. Department is a dimension, and within that department dimension, I have values that I can choose. If we take a look at those dimension values for department, here are the different departments that I can select from, okay? As I'm going through and creating transactions, and if I'm selecting the department dimension, I can select and hit the drop down and say, all right, this is for production or any other department. And just like we talked about, how hard is it to add a new department, for example? Well, maybe I've got a new department and all I have to do is, add it. So who do we have? How about a new marketing department? Because I don't think we have one. I just added a new marketing department. Marketings, there we go. That's all it takes to add a new department. I added a new marketing department to our list. That's all set. And I can have as many dimensions as I want. And you'll see as we go into looking at some entries, you may want to kind of consider your users when you're talking about adding multiple dimensions and having them key things in. We have the ability also to require dimensions. I'm going to jump to our office supplies account, for example. Now on this particular GL account, I can enforce that a department be used on this account. If I go to my dimensions here, we can see I'm requiring department to be populated. And that's because when we budget, I want to make sure that transactions don't just slip through and not get applied to anybody's department. So I'm going to require that, and I can do that for any one of our dimensions. If I wanted to require every dimension be entered, maybe this is an account regarding grants, I can attach the grant dimension and require that. So that code mandatory means if you're going to make an entry against this GL account, you are going to have to require or have to enter a department on this particular GL account. That's one of the rules, and that's just enforcing business rules within the dimensions. So pretty cool stuff there. This is our office supplies account. I'm going to jump into a quick journal entry, and I just want to show you how our office supplies, and I'm going to hit that new dimension that we just put in there, the new department. So I've got an entry in here already started. It was going to the sales department, but I'm going to change that. We're going to go to our new marketing department. Where are you? Here it is. Here's our marketing department. I'm going to go in here. So again, I quickly added that additional department, and right away I'm able to process a transaction against it. I'm going to go in here. One thing I love to do and love about Business Central is the ability to preview post. That means I can actually see before I actually commit it to the GL and then find out, oops, I made a mistake and I got to now I've got reclass entries all the place. I can see where I'm hitting. So this is going to petty cash. All right, so we've got, let me expand this open a bit so you can actually see it. And we can see it's going to the marketing department. So it's coming out of petty cash. We are going to office supplies expense. And I did this entry twice. I duplicated it in that row, so I posted it twice. But anyway, same effect. I'm debiting my office supplies expense for marketing, and I'm crediting petty cash. And I did it twice, so there it is. Actually, I could delete it, knowing that I booked the same entry twice, or was going to. And that's where my preview posting comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and delete one of those because I don't need it in there twice. Now I'm just going to post it. So there we go. Do you want to post? Absolutely, I do. 421. Oh, goodness gracious. I've got an approval process set up for this particular journal entry. So now I have to request approval from my manager. Okay, so that is part of running here. So if I go and say request approval for the journal batch, I'm going to send that approval. So me as a user, I have my manager who has to approve my journal entry. And that's why that was unable to post. Now, I'm not going to take you through the other side of that, but essentially I've got an admin user who is my approver, and they would receive two things. They're going to see on our Role Center on the dashboard. Notice I have two here. Well, on the admin side, they're going to see one here that says, hey, they got an approval request. They're also going to receive an email through Outlook. So talking about that integration to Business Central. Not only are they receiving notification here, they're also going to get pinged on an email that says, hey, there's a journal batch that you need to approve or is awaiting your approval. So they can approve it and then post it, or they can approve it and send it back to this person and then I can post it. That is out there waiting to be posted. So I'm going to move through and actually we're going to take a look at the office supplies account, and I want to show you some of the functionality with the dimensions that we can do as far as reporting. I'm going to go back to that office supplies account because now we're all familiar with it. And if I want to look at this balance and go, well, I know this balance is made up of many different entries that go to specific departments. Well, I could certainly just click on this and go here and I can see all the departments that are being affected by these entries, right? Now, in a normal scenario or in, other softwares, you might say, well, I'm just going to copy this somehow and dump it out to Excel. Well, I can do that. I can actually take this page and go open in Excel and it will do that. Or if I'm just truly trying to gauge my budget as to how much of this went to sales, I can simply go back here. I'm going to go back into my office supplies. I'm in the actual account. Right here, I can go to balance and take a look at balance by dimension. So notice my row is going to be the GL account. My columns are going to be defined by the department dimension. Now I'm going to take this 64. I'm putting my office supplies account in there, and let's take a look at this matrix. So right now, what we're looking at is the breakdown of this 27,000 by department, all the way across the board. Notice my marketing department is there. I just added it. I don't have to change a bunch of things. I added one value to that department list, and here it is. And that transaction, once my manager approves it, it would show up in here as that activity once I posted it. But you can see how valuable this is. I'm able to just break down and see by department what these expenses are. I can drill into this very sales number and see what transactions have looked at. Now, if I'm looking here and I see there's this entry, wow, that's here's one, $1,500. Maybe I want to actually look at that and see what that is. I can go right back to the posted purchase invoice. This is the actual entry that was booked. Here it is. This is the posted purchase invoice, worldwide importers, and I can see all the details. If there was attachments, I would see those here. So from analyzing that GL account for my sales department, I'm able to drill right back to the point of entry of that transaction. Now these are journal entries. I can see that. And the way I can tell that too, if I go to entries and go to find entries, it's only pulling up the GL entry. You notice the other one had a vendor entry, a posted purchase invoice entry. So this was just a GL entry. That's all that took place here. And it looks like some sort of allocation actually, or something like that. Pretty cool stuff. So from analyzing an account by department, again, that dimensional reporting that I'm getting now that I'm entering transactions and using the dimensions, I have the ability and visibility to look at these accounts very specifically by department or by cost center, whatever the dimensions are that we have assigned to those accounts. So let's take a look here, and I don't know what other account or what other dimensions I might have associated with that. But if I want to get multi-dimensional, I'm going to show you another report that will do that. Not in this scenario would I do multi-dimensional, but I have an account schedule later that I'm going to show you where I can say, take the department or a grant, for example. I think a grant's a really good example. I can take a specific grant, different elements of that grant, and drill down to it. So I'm using multiple dimensions. This screen doesn't really give me multiple dimension functionality, but other reports definitely do. under different dimensions, and I can pick the actual dimension. Say I'm looking at a particular, here's a grant. Let me just click on this. So when I'm clicking on or selecting grants as a dimension, I'm limiting the department that a grant can get posted to. Because I wouldn't post grants to like my admin department, for example. Yes, I do. Let me see. Here it is. So I've got a list of grants that are, there's just 2 grants, and I can see what, hopefully I don't have them set up in here, but I can limit which dimensions are available for specific accounts, and there's a bunch of different rules that you can put in there. I'm trying to find one that has one set up in here. This is grants department. Let me go this way. Yes, I do. All right. So here's an example where I've got 2 grants, and so here's my grant listings. Now, those grants, whenever I'm posting against a grant, notice I'm blocking out certain departments that can't ever post to a, sales department would never post to a grant. So I block that out. That way, when I'm posting to a grant, I can limit which departments are visible in that dropdown. We can build in business rules that way. I can also limit on specific, departments, any one of the dimensions that we have, the business groups, based on how we're doing it. I can limit what's available for that. And this gets kind of complex. I don't have a real good example, but office supplies expense, I can actually go from the account and say, well, office supplies can only be charged against 3 different departments, right? And I can limit that list. This is kind of going from the dimension back to limiting the dimension there. Let me see if I can scroll over. Anything else makes a little bit more sense there. But the short answer is yes, through the dimension combinations, we have the ability. There's other business rules that we can enforce. For example, if a customer record is on a journal entry, for example, I may require a specific dimension to be identified with that. So we have the ability not only at the GL account level, but also at the record level, meaning if an account or if a customer is on an account, or if a job number appears on a particular transaction, require that the department be populated. So we can enforce business rules like that. Kind of tapping into the Outlook and the integration to the other applications within the Office 365 environment. So if I take my chart of accounts, and this is just I'm going to do a very brief example here, but I can take this and open it in Excel, or I can actually edit in Excel. And I want to show you the edit functionality because it's pretty powerful. And we use this actually during implementation. So sometimes when we're loading data, like customers, vendors, items, things like that, we will actually use this because sometimes what happens is, well, we bring in a group of vendors and then, hey, we want to set the posting group for all the vendors to be the same. Well, rather than going and creating some export import script and doing all that, we can actually take that list of vendors using this edit in Excel, and you'll notice it's logging into my environment. That's what's happening over here on the right side. It's authenticating my user and reading through the table, and it's going to be dumping in that chart of accounts right here into Excel. Here's my chart of accounts. You can see the balance sheet has that up there, the account names, headings, dollar amounts, all that fun stuff. And if I wanted to make a change, and I'm just going to change my checking account title from Chase Bank to Bank of America, for example, and I'm doing this in Excel. And all I have to do, I'm going to publish the change I just made. I published it. It says it's successful. I'm going to go ahead and close this Excel spreadsheet, and that's all done. Now, if I scroll up to my there it is. It updated it to Bank of America. So right there, that account, I did that just very quickly. Kind of a lame example because I could quickly just open it up. But like I mentioned, if we have to do a mass change with a list of vendors, a list of customers or items or anything like that, I can actually take that list out to Excel, make changes. I can even do that with a journal entry screen as well. So if I was in my general journals and I wanted to, if I had hundreds of rows in my general journal entry and I had to make some changes, I could just dump that out to Excel and make those changes, publish them back in, and then post that entry. Very powerful. Now, it has business rules built into that. I can't go ahead and change my bank balance, for example, through Excel. That just doesn't work because these are built up of transactions, right? So it's going to enforce the business rules here and not allow me to change things that are not changeable, for example, like this dollar amount. Knowing that there's transactions that build up that amount, that's where the limitation is. But very powerful tool, like I mentioned. As implementers, we use that tool to assist after we bring in data. If we have to clean some different things, it just gives us the ability to do it right in Excel very quickly, publish the changes back, and we're done. It's a huge time saver and many other ways you can use that for efficiencies. But very powerful tool. And there is that is a permissionable thing. So not every user will have that functionality unless we give that to them. So just keep that in mind. That was up until about a year ago. It wasn't. It was a across the board. Every user can do that, and it just made people cringe a little bit. It's like, I don't want that guy to be able to do that. There you go, or gal. And so that is now a permissionable function in Business Central. And I think that's some of the cool parts too, is that those types of features continue to come out in Business Central as well. You know, we have a new release just came out, and every time we get a release, there's just a great amount of new functionality that's coming out, which is really cool. So, all right, another integration piece. I'm going to jump over to Outlook, and I just want to show you something. I'm going to go into my inbox. Let me do a new email real quick here. As soon as I figure out where it is, there it is. It's that big bold button up there. I think I'm in there. Let me try Brian. Let me do that one. So I pulled up Brian Leale, TM Group Inc. I don't remember which customer I might be associated with, but notice what I've got down here, the 3 ellipses down here, and this is the web version. I also can do this from my desktop version as well. But I've got a Business Central link here, and I can create a new purchase order. Maybe I'm working with our vendors. I need to buy some office supplies or something. I can actually go in and do a new purchase order, a new sales order, whatever it is. I can actually create a new document right from Business Central. Now, if I go do a new purchase order, again, I'm not sure what I'm connected to here. I might be just a customer, but let's see what happens here. So notice what it's doing. It's kind of the same thing. It's pulling up Business Central. I'm going to create a sales order, maybe. Let me try that. But the short story here is that we have a link to our environment right from Outlook, and I can start creating documents. So School of Fine Arts, if I wanted to sell, maybe I've got Brian Leale on the phone and he's ordering something. Well, I'm right in my Outlook. I didn't log into Business Central, or I wouldn't have to, and I can start sending or creating a sales order for him. Notice it already has a number, so 101033. If I go over to Business Central, that document already exists. So it's creating it and saving as I go along in here, and I can create those transactions right through my Outlook. I'm not going to finish this, but I want to just bring that to light, and then I can send that email off. It would have an attached PDF of that sales order to Brian, and then he can have, through email, we can just have a conversation. If he says, hey, I like that, sends me another email back saying, go ahead with that. I can open up this email, kind of go back here and convert that sales order to an invoice and move it on through the system. I can actually interact with Business Central through Outlook, whether it be on the vendor side or the customer side, I have functionality that I can do both. Very powerful stuff. Super cool. That's the integration pieces of those Office tools. So Excel and Outlook have a very tight integration with Business Central, which really extends this application far beyond just being an ERP within, Business Central. All right, next thing on the docket. Any questions before I move on to fixed assets? Because that's where we're heading next. Now I've got my list of fixed assets, and I'm going to jump here so I can go from finance and I could go to fixed assets. Let me just go back to my home screen. I'll talk a little bit about navigation. So if I go up to the global search here, rather than going through the menu, if I want, I can just type in fixed assets and I can jump to it here. Notice it brings me right to that screen. I can go there. I could even bookmark that and have it on my main menu up there. So we have a Ford Escort. Looks like about an 85 model. I don't know. Here's my fixed asset. This is one of those features in Business Central. We can actually add images to our vendors, customers, items, fixed assets. Gives them a little bit more of a human feel, right? It's not just a list of verbiage. But if I don't want to look at those pictures, I can actually just go back to a list view. And as I'm on the view, I can open up a little bit more real estate here. So we can see here's the fixed asset. I can also go to small tiles if I want, which would be a little bit smaller image, shows the fixed asset number, the description, and the category in which it resides. So I've got my fixed asset here. So let's drill into this quickly. And we'll look at the fixed asset. And if there's other attachments I might want to put on here, maybe I've got a warranty or something, a document I might want attached to my fixed assets. If they're laptops, I might want serial numbers put on here. The person responsible. So if we issue out a laptop to somebody, maybe I keep them as the responsible person. That way I know where to go to find it if we need to review that particular asset. So we put assets in a couple classes. We have a high level class, which is tangible. This is used for either tangible, intangible, maybe a financial. So if it's an investment or something like that, that would be depreciable. We can do that. Subclasses like vehicles, property, plant, and equipment, those types of categories are typically what falls in the subclass. And within that subclass, we actually define a posting group. And this is what drives to the GL. So if I edit this list, we can look at equipment, for example, and I'll go to the full list here and we can take a look at it. Here we can see that equipment is going to the fixed asset account of 10,800. Well, we got everything going there. That's not a great setup. But anyway, depreciation account would be your accumulated depreciation. So this really drives the actual story of transactions when we're interacting with our fixed assets. So when we acquire it, it's going to hit the fixed asset. When we depreciate it, it's going to hit accumulated depreciation and our depreciation expense account. Now, this is one heck of a car. We must be missing something on this car. It must be filled with gold wheels or something. 150 grand. If I wanted to see any transactions regarding this asset, notice it's a hyperlink, so I can drill into it. There's only one entry to this particular asset, and that's the acquisition entry. We can see that right here, and it was acquired under a different alias there. But this acquisition is the first entry on every fixed asset, and then as we depreciate it, it will start populating those entries. Down here, we put in the depreciation information. When did we acquire it? When are we starting to depreciate? Now, I've got one customer that, hey, we acquired it way back, 2 years ago, but this laptop has not been put in service yet. So our depreciation hasn't actually started yet. So they actually have assets that are just sitting on the shelf waiting for the depreciation to start because they're not using them quite yet. Really drive this. This is straight line depreciation, 5 years. Whatever I put in here, it's going to automatically calculate the end date for me. We have the ability to put maintenance transactions against this. I can put in some maintenance information. When's the next service date? Maybe I need to get an oil change on this baby, and what time, how long is the warranty on it? And if I had some particular vendor that does the warranty or the maintenance on it, I can also have that information in here too. There is insurance information as well. So full complement of fixed asset information is available. And then when we go to run the depreciation, it's as simple as just going process, calculate depreciation, and I'll run depreciation for today. I'm just going to hit a T, and that stamps in today's date. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing here. We're going to post it for today. And I'll calculate depreciation. Now, keep in mind, this asset was brought on board a couple years ago, so I'm calculating depreciation up to today. So it's going to probably be a fairly significant amount. So it says the depreciation has been calculated, one fixed asset GL journal. So this is an indication it's updating our general ledger as well as our fixed assets. So let's take a look at this entry. Sure. Here it is. So it's booking the entry for today, just like we told it to. It's going to create a fixed asset entry, and that entry is going to be a depreciation entry. And wow, that's a lot of depreciation. $49,000. All right. And then it's going to hit, well, it would normally hit our depreciation expense account, but we're going to just roll with it. So now let's post this thing through, and then we can take a look at it. Hopefully. Do you want to post? Sure. Is it going to do it? All right, cool. So now we can actually look at our fixed asset. We can see that now the book value has been updated correctly. We've got our acquisition, we've got our depreciation, and all entries associated with. Now, another nice thing, just like any other entry in the system, we can actually put dimensions on this. So maybe this fixed asset belongs to a particular department or location. I can tag this with those attributes, with those departments, and any transaction that I run for fixed assets on this particular asset will get tagged automatically. Now I don't have to do that within the transaction. These carry through every transaction that this fixed asset is related to. So very powerful. And that goes across the board with any, when we look at jobs here in a moment, same thing on jobs. If I assign dimensions on the job itself, any transactions related to that particular job are going to carry those same dimensions through the transaction. So you don't have to worry about entering them, which is very, very cool. Saves a lot of time. Typically, when I do run depreciation, this is going to be run for all of them, right? Or I could break it up if I wanted to do it in categories or subclasses. Maybe I want to depreciate all of my equipment first for whatever reason. You can break it down that way. But generally, if you don't put any filters on, it's going to depreciate all assets that are ready to be depreciated. I am going to jump over to jobs and job costing. You had mentioned that you would use jobs more of a cost accumulator. So expenses, we just want to put those all in one place so that we could report on them and see where things go. We have other customers using the jobs module or the jobs functionality for that specific purpose as well. I've got an internal job here that I just set up just real quickly to kind of reflect on what you're looking at. And again, we have the ability to put in the dimensions. So if I go to job dimensions, I can tag this. It's already tagged with a department. Maybe I've got a location I want, but know that we can tag this with the job itself. And then, as I mentioned earlier, anytime I use this job in a transaction, it will automatically populate that admin department for me, so I don't have to worry about remembering that all the time. So that's a really nice feature. And we can see here we've got some activities or some charges. These are actual costs that have come in against this particular job. Now, I don't know if you would need to break it out at all, but it gives us the ability. This is just an internal maintenance job, and I'm just accumulating costs for, this could be for 2021. I want to see where we land for this particular category in this year, and I just need a bucket to put these things in so we can break it down. Well, we use subcontractors, and then we have supplies. So when I'm booking a transaction, I can choose the job, so the internal maintenance job, and then I can categorize where I want that cost to go. So I can either go to subcontract or supplies. And that's how these transactions have entered or have ended up here. And I can drill back to the transaction. So as we're accumulating cost here, I can drill into this and see what activities are relating here. So here's a particular subcontract entry. Again, I can go to entry, find entries, and see what made up this entry. I can see right away it's an invoice. It's a purchase invoice. I drill into this and I'm right back at the point of entry. And if I scroll over, you'll notice that admin department was populated automatically for me because it was at the header of the job. So here is the transaction that makes up that amount. I can see all that activity and I drilled into that right from the job itself. Now I've got other reporting factors that I've got on the job. Over here, I can see just a summary of GL accounts. Now, if there was items or resources, cost, I would see that here. But this is basically just going to be a big bucket for us to see what kind of costs are coming in here and give me an ability to report on it and analyze that. So by doing the job, I have the actual ability to accumulate those costs in one area that gives me visibility to that. And what I've got one customer that was doing this exact scenario, and they're like, well, at the end of the cafeteria remodel, we want to fix it, we want to convert that over to a depreciable, expense. So what they did is they used the job to capture all those costs, and now they've got forever backup on what the substantiation of that original remodel was, because all those costs came into the job, and basically they just took the job total in the end and made that a fixed asset and started depreciating that remodel. So that's some of the functionality that you can use this for within the jobs. I'll go through just a quick entry and I'll show you how those transactions look. So when we're in purchase invoice, let's say I'm buying something, I know it's going to one of our particular jobs internally. So here's an example. I've got this invoice out there for First Up Consultants. They're doing some work for us right here on the line itself. So we're going to job cost or whatever cost expense account I'm hitting. I select the job from here, so I can just start typing in internal job or maintenance, and it would drop that in. And here are those tasks that I've kind of split out. Again, if you only have one, you can just designate a default task. I like to see things broken out a little bit, so I broke it out by subcontract and supplies. It's going to the main location, and there's my amount, and that's all there is. And again, that department is defaulted in from me dropping that job on the line. It knows that that's the dimension that needs to be hit. I would post this through, and then I would have that information. I'll go ahead and post this, and yes, this is 3218. That's fine, and I don't need to see the posted purchase invoice. So now if I go back to that job, we should see those additional costs on there, and we can take a look at it real quick. And here's my internal job. And notice now I've got those costs reflected right in there. So there's my subcontract, got my 2 invoices, and I can review those, drill into them, report on them. Yeah, and that's exactly what the budget for the jobs would be. We don't have to reflect it in the GL, right? We don't want that entry in our general ledger budget. It's a contract budget. That's exactly what this would be used for. So if I go to create a job planning line, I can actually set a budget here for that particular subcontract. Let's just say we've got a $10,000 budget for our subcontract, and I'm going to say this is a GL account. I think that's going to let me do it. Hopefully it will. I'm going to open this up a minute so we can see. So this is my subcontract. So subcontract services, there we are. And I'll say 10,000. All right, so now we have a budget. And so now this is, and that's where, maybe that approval process says, hey, before I approve this voucher or this invoice, I want to go make sure we're not going to overrun our budget, right? Is it within the budget? And that might be part of our approval process. So this has given me visibility. Hey, we're at 4,700 of the 10,000. All right, we still have room in that budget. Looks like we're doing all right at this point. And I have visibility right here as well. I can see where we're at against our budget. Absolutely. Yep. And that's really the function of, like we just talked about, I don't have to set up a budget in my general ledger to kind of track that on the subcontracting GL account. I'm really focusing on the contract itself. So this is my budget, and now we can start charging against that and see where we land. You could break down IT, leasehold improvements and so on and so forth. And then when they're charging those costs, they would hit these specific categories against the budget that we just, that we would establish. And that gives you the reporting ability to make sure everything is still in line, right? That's totally an appropriate use of what jobs can offer for you. Allocations was another thing that we talked about the other day, and I want to touch on that briefly here. So let's take a look at allocations. And we talked about FTEs as being one of the identifiers of how are we allocating, administrative cost or IT overhead costs, something like that. So in Business Central, we have what we call recurring entries or recurring GL entries. And as soon as I find it, there it is, recurring general journal. I've got an entry in here, and I'll walk you through the setup here. This is there's a few different ways that we can do that. Basically, I can take the balance of a GL account and allocate it. If I'm accumulating certain cost, I can say, hey, in this example, I'm taking my utilities expense and I'm allocating it by head count to the different departments. So when I book my GL or when I book my utilities expense, I don't hit any particular department because I'm going to let the allocation really spread that out. So all I'm doing is I'm taking my utility bills and I book them to the 61,300 account. And then when I scroll over here, the balance of that account is shown here. So I run this on a monthly basis. And if I drill into this, it's showing me that this amount is the allocated amount. I can drill into this and see how that allocation is being derived, right? So here's the percentage. Either I can enter in the quantity or if I know the percentage. In this case, I'm doing head count. Well, it's not a percentage. It's I have 18 people. I don't have 18.32 people. So I'm entering the head count by department or by location in this case. Well, no, they are departments. So I got Central Red, Eastern region, and my Western region. So I'm allocating based on that. I've got 18 people here, 14 there, 20 there. Business Central does the math on the percentage and gives us how it's going to allocate that $9,000 balance of that account. And here is the allocation. So at the end of the month or during my month-end process, all I have to do is pull up my allocation, which is this one here, my June utilities, and process this through. Notice I don't put any amounts in here because it's taking the balance of that GL account and it's going to allocate it to the proper departments, the proper dimensions that I've defined there. And I could take that to many different levels. I only went to one department, but I could take it to multiple levels of dimension if I wanted to. Think of our FTEs. I can update this on a monthly basis prior to running my allocation if we have a change. This is where I'd modify that particular value, and then it's going to recalculate and post that entry for me. So on a monthly basis, I would just review that head count prior to posting, and there you go. It will allocate those to the appropriate departments or dimensions as defined in that allocation. And that's how most people are using this particular allocation. Again, it has the ability to take the balance. Let me show you the different flavors here. If it's variable, it will just take it and post it through, and then next month we have to put in the amount. It's not going to drop in the amount. If it's a fixed amount, maybe it's rent, and we have a year-long contract for rent that doesn't move. If it's a fixed amount like that, we just drop the amount in there, and then every month after I run it, it just updates the date to the next period for us. There's advanced allocation modules or third parties that are out on AppSource, which is the app store for Business Central. Similar to GP, where we have McCorma and all these vendors that do different things to add enhancements or features and functions to GP. Business Central has the app source, which does pretty much the same thing. If you need functionality beyond the basic allocations in Business Central, there's probably other third parties out there that we can bring in. And typically they're pretty reasonable because it is more of an app and it's subscription based. So price wise, it's really pretty reasonable actually. If this doesn't meet your needs, then there's typically something out there that will. One thing I do want to show is regarding the bank account or the bank reconciliation. I've got a bank rec in here. I'll pull this up real quick, and this is just my checking account. And I think I already did modify or match up some of these. Let me unmatch these and I'll show you how this looks when we import information in. So I'm removing the match. So you can see here, there we go, pull this up a little bit. On the right side, when I open up a brand new reconciliation, this is all the activity that took place in my general ledger against my bank account. Okay, so those are the entries that I'm basically reconciling. I can import in electronically or via like a CSV file, depending how you get it from your bank or what bank you're using. You can import the file and then have this over here. And then basically we just go through a matching exercise. And I can simply go in and say auto match everything, and it will do its best. And I've got a date tolerance here. Sometimes we book something in our bank account today that might not actually clear the bank till tomorrow. So when we're doing the matching exercise, we might want to put a couple days in there so that it will match both the date, the amount, and come up with a better match. Now, if I put a 0 in here, I'll just show you there's no tolerance. I'll run this through a moment and see what happens and how well it matches here. So when it gets done matching, it'll tell me, hey, 7 lines out of 8 are matched. So I can look through here. Everything that's highlighted in green is matched up. And I'll notice I got this 32,000 over here that was on 12/30. I know I've got an entry in here for something similar to that. Here it is. So here's 32,000 in my GL, and that was on 12/31, which is interesting. It's kind of backwards, but I know these two match. So all I have to do is click on that one there and click on this one here and just say match. And now that one has been cleared out too. And I can continue all the way through my bank rec that way and match up everything that's in my bank rec. And then anything left is going to be outstanding. And we also get transactions in our bank statement that may not be reflected in our general ledger, right? Like bank service fees that they just drop on the statement for us. Well, if that happens, I can highlight that entry and actually from the bank rec have it create a journal entry in my bank so that I can clear that entry with the activities in my general ledger. So right from the bank rec, I can make those entries and bring those in. A lot of our customers, they use this functionality to record direct debits, right? Because hey, I've got people making deposits in my general ledger or in my bank account automatically that might not be reflected in my GL yet. Well, I can use my bank rec process if I do this on a daily basis to start creating those entries. There's some functionality there depending on how frequently you're doing bank reconciliation. There is functionality where we have certain banks that we can link to, so you can have this brought in electronically or automatically. It will bring in the bank statement functions, and then you can clear those out and reconcile. Like I said, daily, weekly, or if you wait monthly to do it, that functionality is there. Pretty smooth process once you start using it. We have, I don't think I've had anybody complain about the way it works. It seems to just work. So pretty straightforward stuff there. Here's an income statement, I think, and I'll go ahead and just run this for a moment. So we'll grab this one. And I believe, let me run this here. So notice right out of the gate, you can see I've got my dimension filters. So this is running without any filters. I'm looking at my income statement. Now this one is net change. Let me grab one that has maybe a full year or periods. I think this one might. Current period, period one. Okay. The nice feature about and I can preview these if I want to shorten this up so I have more visibility. I can actually look at the report this way. I can create the columns. I can have current period, budget, difference, so on and so forth. But what's nice about this as I'm reviewing it, if I'm looking at these materials on this particular row, I can actually drill into the financial statement from here and get back to the entries that make up those activities. So I can review it here. Again, I've got the ability to filter by department, so I can go to my admin department and run this report. Now I'm looking only at the admin department. I also use this report for tracking grants. We've got the ability to use accounts for statistical entry, for example. Maybe I want a grant. It's not a financial entry, but I want to track against that. Maybe we were awarded 100,000 and it's really more of a reimbursement. So we track expenses and then we request reimbursement. I can do that through using what we call statistical accounts. They're not per se statistical, but they are accounts in our GL that we use only for statistical purposes. And then we can report on them and come up with a financial statement for a particular grant. But this would be an example of an income statement. As I scroll, let me filter those down again. And I can also print them. Let me grab, that might give us a little bit better look. Print. You can use whatever start date. It is, the system is transactional by day, so you can use a specific day. You don't have to use period dates in here. 21, we're gonna go way out. We're gonna just look at the whole thing, see if we get some numbers this time. I can send this out via email. I can download it, but before I hit the run here, I can do send to. I can go out to a PDF. I can schedule it to run. So here I can put it out to a PDF, and then that's going to save it as a document down here, and then you can email it that way. So this doesn't go direct to email from the actual report, but we can create it as a PDF and then send it off that way.
Unless there's any other questions on today's demo, I'm going to stop the recording. Is that
yeah,
okay?
go ahead and do that.
Everyone? Okay.